The research project that is behind me is a project based on Conservation Reserve Program lands, CRP lands. One of the reasons we're looking at this project is when this project started, had about 3 million acres of CRP lands. When those acres come out of contract, we're looking to see if there's another way that producers can utilize these lands without putting them back in row crops. CRP was started in 1985, and it was basically a program that took land out of crop production and put it into permanent grassland in order to try to conserve soil and reduce surface water runoff. The research project itself is one that is looking at a few different management objectives in order to look at the potential of these CRP lands to produce biomass for feedstocks, for energy. The CRP that's in this project is typical of what most CRP lands are in Kansas. It's a mixture of native warm season grasses. A couple of the things that we're looking at are, number one, nitrogen fertilization, looking at different fertilizer rates on these CRP lands, and we're also looking at two different timings of when the biomass is going to be harvested during the year. So we have 3 different fertilization treatments. One is no fertilization, one is a treatment of 50 pounds of nitrogen added, and the other fertilization treatment is 100 pounds of nitrogen added. And the harvest management that we're utilizing, the 2 different times of year of when these are harvested, one is close to peak standing crop, shortly after the midpoint of the summer, after July 15th, and the other time period is at the end of the season after we've had a first frost. After July 15th is important because July 15th is basically what has been set aside as the end of Kansas's grassland bird nesting season. And so harvesting after that is basically to try to avoid disturbing any nesting birds that might be using the CRP during that time. This research project is a little bit different than your typical plot research experiments. It's much larger scale. Each of the plots themselves is 1 acre in size, and so we use typical field scale equipment for harvesting these plots. Just like the swathers and the balers that producers would use on their hay crops, that's what we use in order to harvest these plots and to transport them to where we need to do our next steps of analysis on them. Nitrogen fertilization has increased productivity. We've been able to increase production by about 600 pounds an acre from adding 50 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer, and just a little over 1,000 pounds an acre by utilizing 100 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer per acre. This is the only location in Kansas. This is part of a larger project. There's a total of 6 locations throughout the U.S. looking at CRP production in this project. One is in Montana, another in North Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Georgia. This study started in 2008, and it is a 5-year study. It's projected to end in 2012. So we have the current growing season of 2011 plus next year's growing season of 2012 to complete the study. We've done other things besides looking at just the biomass harvested off of these plots. We've also kept track of the plant population or plant composition in these plots to see how they've changed over time due to the harvest management and the nitrogen fertilization treatments. We've also collected soil samples, and so we're going to be able to track and see how some of the nutrient status has changed over time, as well as some other soil properties that we may be able to look at. So there's other things involved that we're looking at besides just biomass. This project is important basically because Kansas has about 2.5 million acres of CRP lands. And so anything that affects CRP or any research that deals with CRP has the potential to be a big impact and affect a large acreage of Kansas's lands.